Welcome you to the Coeur d'Alene School District 271 Board Meeting for August 7th, 2017. Will the gentlemen please remove their hats and everyone please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, again, thank you for being here tonight. Before we get going, I'd just like to introduce our participants for this evening. Starting at my far right is Mr. Chris Shipley, our new Director of Finance and Operations. Welcome, Chris. Ms. Lynn Town, Clerk of the Board, and Dr. Stan Olson, our Superintendent. To my immediate left is Mr. Tom Hearn, our Vice Chair, Ms. Lisa May, Board Member, Ms. Tambra Pickford, Board Member, and Mr. Dave Eubanks, Board Member. My name is Casey Morserow, and I'm the Chair and also a Board Member. Public comment on district-related items is scheduled near the start of this meeting. Please sign in on the sheet provided at the entrance door. Because of the diversity of issues, members of the board will not respond to public comment made during tonight's meeting. Instead, issues may be recorded and referred to the proper staff person for follow-up. Comments may also be submitted to the board in writing through the clerk. Okay. So, board members, is there a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
So moved.
Okay, thank you. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, motion carries, Ms. Town. And is there a motion to approve the minutes for meetings on July 10th and July 24th of 2017?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Okay, for board recognition tonight, we're going to recognize a couple groups and individuals. So first is the TESH program. So over the past 7 weeks, TESH Incorporated has partnered with the Coeur d'Alene Public Schools to provide summer custodial service at each of our traditional high schools, as well as assistance at our book warehouse. Tonight, we'd like to recognize these students and staff from TESH in the Idaho Division of Vocational Rehabilitation. During the summer months and over the school year, TESH employees work with our custodial service department to clean rooms and common areas each day. Here tonight, representing this crew, are a few individuals. And if you wouldn't mind when I call your name, if you'd come up, I know that's no one's favorite thing to do, but if you would, I'd appreciate it. Sure. Thank you. Al Clayton, Patrick Moss, Chuck Wilson, and Howard Hogan. At our book warehouse, students partnered with 2 teachers along with Mike Nelson and Nicole Olson to barcode, scan, distribute, and prepare our instructional materials so they are ready for the start of each year. Joined by Winton Elementary teachers Annika Jones and Brenda Burns, we'd like to recognize these students: Avery Irvin, Ashton Portray, River Bishop, Matthew Stolley. All right. Thanks for coming, Matthew. Thank you so much. Okay. This collaboration and grant was made possible by the dedicated efforts of TESH Incorporated and the Idaho Division of Vocational Rehabilitation. Joining us tonight representing these agencies, we'd wish to thank Francis Huffman, TESH Chief Executive Officer, Terry Johnson, TESH Director of Rehabilitation, Susan Green, Job Coach, and Angie Murillo, Vocational Rehabilitation Counselor from the Division of Vocational Rehabilitation. Okay, perfect. Welcome, Chris. Thank you. So again, we'd just like to thank you all. This has been a terrific program for our district, and I know for the community and the students. So thank you for coming here tonight and allowing us to recognize you, and thank you for your continued efforts. Okay, we'd also like to recognize Panhandle Health. Is Laura Whelan here? Hi, Laura. So Panhandle Health has partnered with the school district in many ways. One example is supporting the health of our school community through vaccination clinics offered in our schools and at school open house events. This allows parents to easily check to determine if their child has the required vaccinations and receive additional vaccinations while attending their open house. They are a great collaborative partner with the Coeur d'Alene Public Schools. On behalf of the Board of Trustees and the school district, we'd like to offer our thanks. Thank you. Thank you. Have a great night. Okay, Mr. Twitchell, do you have a Coeur d'Alene Education Association report for us tonight? And welcome. Glad to have you here.
There we go. Now I think it's on, right? Alrighty. Okay, so Dr. Olson, board members, like to just thank you for allowing me to be here and to represent the great Coeur d'Alene Education Association. Of course, I am a little bit biased in calling it great. First off, I would just like to say that I am mad and I am angry and I'm gonna yell. No, not really. No. In fact, the complete opposite. We are very happy that with working with you, the board, and with the CEA negotiations team, that we have a contract in place to start the year, and that is just an absolutely fantastic, great start to the year. I would also like to talk a little bit about earlier this summer in early July, myself, as well as Jamie Mahoney, who also teaches at Coeur d'Alene High School. We had the opportunity to attend the National Education Association Representative Assembly. Got the whole name. The greatest thing for me about attending that, and this year was in Boston, is that it really shows me that this union is a bottom-up organization. Unions quite often get a bad rep that there's the union thugs at the top and all they want is the money, 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 and I'm here to tell you that that is absolutely not true at all. Some of the things that were discussed, well actually first, within the matter of a week, we were able to get through to fully debate, discuss in a full democracy arena with about 9,000 people from across the country, actually and overseas too. There, we were able to get through 159 new business items, several constitutional amendments, some policy statements, as well as standing rules. And I really think that, even at the state legislature setting, that would probably take about 5 years to get through that many things. And at the national level, it probably would have had to start in 1776, and they still would be going on it. So it really impressed me that we were able to get through that. Virtually everything on there relates to students and making sure that they can feel safe and secure and that it's the best situations for them in the classrooms. Some of the big topics that came up over and over again, one of which was charter schools. And one of the very first things that we did under a policy statement was to boil it down. I mean, I can show you here, it's over a page long, but to boil it down essentially is that charter schools need to be held to the same standards that our regular public schools are. That just kind of the free-for-all that is happening in many parts of the country is not okay. That they're unaccountable and the for-profit spots are not okay. Some other things, sorry, let me get here. Quite a bit too that popped up a lot was the LGBTQ student population. From what I've seen and heard, you know, a lot of the things that came up with all this stuff, including the LGBT situations, we don't have much of an issue here. I mean, we're doing great things here in the Coeur d'Alene School District, and I'm proud to be here because of that. But, you know, just basically one of the things is that the NEA stands for all students, including immigrant students, students from religious minorities, students of color, and LGBTQ students, and will act to ensure their civil rights are fully protected by, and then there's a list of things here. And, you know, and one more thing I'll just point out that, you know, to me stood out was just that the NEA will do more to get information out there about suicide prevention. You know, knock on wood, luckily we haven't had an issue with that here for a few years, and hopefully we'll continue to do so. But again, you know, this union, which is bottom up, you know, it's people just like me or Jamie Mahoney are voting on these things. It's all about the students and making sure that they're safe and secure and have great places to learn and are treated equally and fairly. So, and if any of you are interested in seeing every single thing that we voted on, I'm more than happy to share this. It's also on the NEA website, so you can go there and look at that. You know, we're getting close to the start of the school year, so people are getting excited. I know there's many teachers out there already doing things off contract, but to start to get ready, also I guess technically on contract, we have many sports already starting, which is one reason why I have the sunburn on me right now. Out with soccer today. Go Vikings. And, you know, just really look forward to the start of the new year and looking forward to working with all of you, and hopefully everything will go great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Bruce. Well done. Ms. Town, is there anyone signed up for public comment? I'm guessing not, based on the audience. Okay. Well, we're cruising tonight. So our superintendent's report, Dr. Olson.
Thank you very much, President Morris Rowe. Several items of interest to the board, staff, and community. 4 board interviews done, 2 to go. We will be meeting on Thursday, and then on the advice of virtually every board member that I've talked with so far, I'm going to be interviewing Krista Hazel as well, as part of the past board, relative to receiving more input. These are moving along very nicely. I appreciate tremendously the candor and the insight that you're sharing. It's going to go a long way in helping us do what we need to do, and that is setting the priorities for the coming year and setting the table for the ongoing superintendency that you'll place this winter and fall and spring. Second item, new board member orientation. Lisa May will start this process off on the 30th of August with our folks at Special Education and our Title I program, and they are just anxious to get you in their domain and have you really take a deep dive into the types of programs and services they offer. We also have a couple of other dates, the 20th and 27th for secondary ed and elementary ed respectively. What I'm going to do is post those dates so that all board members can see them, dates and times and sites, so that if you'd like to join Lisa, feel free to do so. What we'd like to do is have you let us know in case we have 3 or more, and we certainly would have to post that. But there are open opportunities, and as we move along into the early part of the school year, we'll schedule the rest of those and make those dates available to you. Third item is we will be meeting with the K-Tech people, and that's this Wednesday. And I have scheduled a follow-up meeting with the superintendents of Post Falls and Lakeland afterwards to start identifying objects and items of common interest between and among our districts, and to move the ball down the road on those. So just to give you a heads up that that meeting is Wednesday afternoon. Friday, I'm going to be doing a presentation for the Kootenai County Democratic Caucus at 12 noon at the Iron Horse Grill. We're going to get a chance to sit down and talk about the process that got us together and where we're going from here and how that's going to play out. They're also very anxious to speak with our new board colleague, and we're going to be having them schedule that as the year goes on. Data Summit dates. We've talked about the Data Summit process, and we've begun the internal discussion on that and how to structure that program to get the most out of it. One of the conclusions we've come to is it probably is not going to get done in one session in terms of the amount of information we need to cover and then the discourse that will follow. We're taking a look at attempting to set a date, and one of the dates in mind, and our request for the board, recognizing that you have extraordinarily busy schedules and beyond your commitment to regular and special board meetings, we would like you to consider possibly the 28th of September, and I'll send an email out and see if that's possible, where we could spend the entire day together. And with the permission of the board, there are a number of individuals and groups who have affiliation, the partnership, various advocacy groups for the district that are very interested in the program and would like to expand them and offer an opportunity for them to join us. Because all board members will be there, of course, that will be an open meeting, and the press certainly will be an active observer in the process. But as I said, we'll send an email out and find out if the 28th is possible for all of you. If it is, we'll lock that and go to work with that target date. What we'd also like to do, and it makes great sense to me, is to perhaps allow the board a first crack at a packet of data that we're going to be talking about. Many board members have had bits and pieces of this along the way, and what we'd like to do is give you a first look at this, and then, of course, we'll be covering it in person along the way. And we'd also ask the president of our association to be an active participant, not only in the first meeting, but throughout. We think that would be very helpful for all of us and really make a nice difference relative to the discourse. So, Trustee Eubanks and I are going to be meeting this week. We need to set the date before you escape tonight, sir, to bring the staff bullying policy piece into forefront and basically maybe smooth a few rough edges off of that, and then develop a view for process, how we bring that first to the board for approval, and then secondly, out to the staff, so that we make everyone aware. We recognize that we're hiring a number of new people this year who've never had a contact with the premise of the existing policy or that which preceded it. So our work will be important and significant, and we'll get her done. So before you escape, if you would. And then if other board members would like to join us in that discussion, please huddle around and we'll make that happen. As you know, in November, the president of the National School Boards Association is going to be joining us, Tom, with your executive board and the representation of the Idaho School Boards Association. They've asked to make a visit to a program in the district. We've looked at a number of them. One of the major considerations is the prospect of NWEA, the new Northwest Expedition Academy. The reason for that is that it really kind of represents a staff and principal basically taking on a new assignment, one that is very powerful and very opportunity-laden for our students. They're going to be doing it in an older building, and some people would say a challenged building, but my view is they are up for the task, and they really represent what our whole staff is about, and that is attending to children and attending to the needs, interests, and desires of children and families to promote the best educational opportunities possible. So we are leaning toward making that visitation part of the process. If board members want to weigh in on that, please let us know and direct those to Chair Morse-Rowe and me, and we'll lock that in. And if you're comfortable with that, we'd really like to move ahead to get that on the agenda for the November interface. Last but not least, very positive situation dealing with a challenge of the district, and that is our non-certificated personnel. Those individuals who are extremely important to the district, serving us in transportation and food services and custodial services and on and on. As you know full well, the economy has changed and the job situation in this community has changed, making it much more challenging for us to not only get but to sustain candidates in those non-instructional roles, again, that are so important to us. Kelly has done an excellent job, Kelly and her colleagues, in our human resources area to promote not only people coming forward and exploring employment, but obviously making that commitment. Many of you have seen this flyer of the school district job fair that will be coming up actually this Wednesday. And board members, if you have an opportunity to drop by and drop in to take a look at that, we'd like to have you do that. One of the things we really enjoyed was the work of our human resources folks and colleagues in putting together a short video that invites folks to the job fair. We'd like to take just a moment and preview it with you if we could. All right.
Coeur d'Alene Public Schools is hiring. We have part-time and full-time job openings in many areas.
Like bus drivers, you can help transport our kids to school and back home safely.
Join our custodial staff in taking great care of our schools.
Work with School Plus, our before and after school care program.
Or help us prepare and serve nutritious meals to our students.
We also need crossing guards and playground assistants.
And we are looking for part-time and full-time classroom assistants. We also have a need for substitute teachers. You can learn more about these positions and fill out an application at the school district summer job fair on Wednesday, August 9th from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. The job fair will be at the Midtown Meeting Center located at 1505 North 5th Street in Coeur d'Alene. We also invite you to learn more on our website at www.cdaschools.org or call us at 208-664-8241.
Coeur d'Alene Public Schools is a great place to work. Our classified employees bring a great deal of wisdom and experience to the setting. We hope you'll join us for the 2017-18 school year and beyond.
Come join us.
Come join us.
Please come and join us at Coeur d'Alene Schools.
There you go. Just as a son of a 25-year junior high and high school head cook, my now 98-year-old mother was apprised of this, and she said, "Good for you, Kelly." We know also that a one-shot deal isn't going to get us there, and Kelly has really identified a series of events and activities that will carry on into the first semester and throughout the year to bring us those candidates that, again, are so essential to serving our students. So very nicely done. Just a heads up on that.
Where are we advertising?
For this?
For this, yeah.
On Facebook, in the paper,
Okay.
press.
Okay.
Lisa may have put it on Indeed, I'm not sure, but I think it's on our website, Facebook.
Okay.
You don't have to
You don't have to say it again. It's okay.
Kelly,
Just to
how-
clarify, that was on Facebook and Coeur d'Alene Press and potentially Indeed. That's okay.
How many positions are you trying to fill? How many positions are open to be filled? No.
Kelly, just use your fingers.
We have several. We have several special education parapros that will be filling part-time and full-time.
You get it. Several special ed parapro positions. We have crossing guards, playground, Title I aides, custodians we're looking for right now, full-time and part-time, substitutes as well. Teacher subs, we're hoping to get some of those. Bus drivers. We're in desperate need for some sub-bus drivers and full-time bus drivers as well. Food service, part-time, full-time, School Plus, part-time right now. I don't think we have any full-time in School Plus, but we'll be gathering applications from everyone who walks in the door, we hope.
Does anyone pre-register? So do you have any idea how many
No, we didn't do that. So, yeah, we're just hoping that maybe this room will be packed with people.
From what time does this job fair run?
10 to 2
Okay.
on Wednesday, August 9th, in this room.
And if you do have a chance, please do drop by.
Yeah, great.
Thank you very much.
Dr. Olson, I was going to say, September 28th is also the ISBA regional meeting that evening, where we get together with the legislators and other trustees from around the district to discuss a number of issues, but one of them being the resolutions that are passed by the executive board. So just, I'm not saying we couldn't have that meeting that day. We could. I'm just letting you know that that's happening too. So I think Karen Echeverria from Boise will be up here as well, and other people. So that's
Okay.
that evening. And
Okay.
I think you're aware of that, aren't you, Lynn? Or you aren't? Well, that's when it is. You're aware of it now. It's the 28th of September. So
And that's usually at 5 or 6 o'clock.
five or six at one of the schools. Last time we've had an adventure for the last couple of years.
Okay.
But it's
just curious.
fairly well attended by the trustees and
Oh,
by
yeah.
some legislators.
Oh, yeah, I think it's an essential meeting as we head into the legislative session for this year. As you know, there will be a number of items that will impact us substantially. I'm just curious, could I just do a quick tally as to whether or not the 28th might work for you?
Are we talking August or September?
September.
Okay.
Oh, absolutely,
Yeah,
September.
I just wanted to make sure. It's for me.
That's
Like
a
9
Thursday.
9 to 3, what time frame?
I would suggest we'd start at 9 o'clock and probably be done 4 o'clock. Go ahead.
The 28th is our Teacher Leader Academy all day, and so the date that I had written down we were discussing was the 20th.
Okay.
But I might have missed the meeting while I was at training today. Did you change that date? Or?
We looked at a number of conflicts and options and all of that. How many are involved with the leadership program?
Quite a few. All the elementary principals and five or six.
Okay, that's problematic then. That's a problem. Scratch the 28th. Do you remember offhand what our other options were? What I'm trying to do is give us enough time to make sure that we have the materials done, the process done, and that we're ready to go for that first meeting. That first meeting is going to be very, very important. So
From the cabinet notes, it looked like maybe the 12th of September, the 18th of September, or the 20th of September. And then it looked like the 20th was preferred, but
how does the 20th sit with folks?
Who are we trying to primarily draw to the meeting? Is it going to be community? Teachers will obviously be working. Having a workday meeting, if we don't go into the evening, I'll offer like an open input time. We'll be able to get working parents there?
Well, I would think that we'll start out with a core group of obviously board trustees, educators from the district, the leadership of the association, and content area leadership. But we also have advocacy groups in the community, the partnership and so on and so forth, who are intimately involved with the well-being of the district. And if we can fix a date and a time, I can then touch base with those folks and try to get them to lock in their schedules around this and make provisions for that. I've already received several emails from people who are quite passionate about participating, and we're equally passionate about sharing what we've learned and what we're all going to learn together. The 20th?
It's fine with me.
Works for me. So we're
Let's-
talking 9 o'clock, 9 to 4 or
Figure
something
9 to
like
4
that.
on the 20th. Okay, well, we'll keep you as long as we can. How's that?
That's good.
And then we'll catch you up in terms of things that you may have missed.
And one last question, are we going to be taking public questions at this meeting, or will it just be?
Well, the basic
discussion.
concept we're talking about is a delivery response contact. In other words, we'll cover information that will require some explanation, and then we'll do comment and dialogue circles that will draw out information, questions, comments, concerns, and those types of things to report out, then back into presentation. And again, we'll talk demography, we'll talk secondary performance, we'll talk elementary performance, we'll talk specific areas such as SAT, ACT. We'll talk about advanced placement and how we compare in the state to the advanced placement platform that exists in this district compared to others. There's a lot of it. Any feedback, pre-feedback you'd like to give us, let the wheels turn, and if there are some things you want particularly covered in this, let us know in the next week or so that as we're bringing this together and packaging, and I want to emphasize, as they say back home, we ain't going to get it all done in one day. There's a tremendous amount to cover. There's a tremendous amount to talk about. And if we're going to make this productive and make it serve us well, not only to give us direction for the coming year, but to hand off to the ongoing superintendency that will follow this one. We want to do it right and want to do it well. Okay? All righty. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chairman Morris Rowe.
Thank
Whatever
you,
your name is.
Yeah. What's your name? Thank you, Dr. Olson. Okay, Board of Trustee comments. I have a couple on here, and they're really just housekeeping items and one discussion item. But one was just about the superintendent search. As we move forward into that in the fall, just get an idea of where things stand. Lynn and I and Dr. Olson met with Dr. Bill Dean from McPherson Jacobson, our search firm that we retained just prior to this meeting here at about 3 o'clock today. And they've brought forward a proposed timeline. Timeline has us starting basically around the first week of October and wrapping up by the end of January. So I'll get that information out to you guys and just make sure it works with calendars and holidays and travel plans and all those sorts of things. There's, will be a series of meetings that were highlighted in their presentation to us, but 3 or 4 meetings that we'll have with them. Plus they'll be meeting with our community groups, and there's some work to do around that. And they're proposing meeting with community groups towards the end of October. And they would probably have 2 full days. They're thinking, it's really up to us, but they'll meet with a number of different groups, both kind of inside and outside the district, to get their opinion. They'll also have a SurveyMonkey online survey that will run for a few weeks. I think he said 3 or 4 weeks. And we'll get all that data early November. They've already preliminarily posted the position, basically let people know it's out there, and they've done that on their website with more information to come is kind of how they've put it. But by October, they want to have I think that's the impression I got, I guess. By the end of October, early November, they want to have the advertising piece, if you will, out and being heavily circulated. So.
Casey, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Can we get a copy of the posting just to see, how they're advertising it and marketing it, if possible, if they have that yet?
I think the posting right now is Coeur d'Alene School District Superintendent, more information coming soon.
Okay. And then they're thinking actual candidates selected by January?
Yes, they're recommending final interviews and selection of superintendent the last week of January.
And they're not worried about holiday season and difficulty with schedules and traveling and...
No, what they're proposing is that the job posting would close on January 4th, which is basically the last day of the Christmas holiday break. They said that's, in their experience, has been very effective because it allows superintendents and their family to have that couple of weeks off where they can really talk about it and look at opportunities that are out there and, have that family discussion. Is this the right move? And are we ready to move to a new area if we're moving to a new area or a new position and that sort of thing. So they kind of felt if it's, in the hustle and bustle of going into the holidays, a lot of people are just going to be too busy to really focus on the opening. So
I have one last question, and I just may have missed it being new, but is there, if we decide that none of the candidates that they have brought to us are suitable, then can we extend the close date for the...
Yes.
Is that in the contract?
Yeah. Yeah, they actually have a guarantee in the contract. Even if we hire somebody and it didn't work out and they don't stick around within a certain time period, and I can't tell you what that was, it was 12 months or 24 months, something like that, they'll actually come back and do the whole thing again at no charge. So, yeah. The other item, and this is something that Mrs. May brought up, or Trustee May, was a board retreat, and I know it's something the board had talked about prior to July and things changing with Trustee May coming on, but she had asked about it, and I just thought I'd bring it up and poll and whether we think that's something we want to do and when we might want to do that, and that would really be the five of us and Dr. Olson and probably Lynn getting together and spending some time. And I know Dr. Olson needs us and expects us to do this, and we need to do it, just to set the course for this year. So, does anyone have any ideas on that, comments on that? I know, Tom, you've got a bit of a traveling schedule in September a little bit.
August, first week of September, yeah, but as far as the idea, I'm definitely in favor of the idea, and we'll do what Yeah, I was going to send out an email, but it's going to be, the last.
Kind of mid-September, it looks like.
Yeah, it's going to be from about the 25th of August to about the 13th of September, so it's about 3 weeks.
Right, so do we want to do it before the data summit or after?
Probably, I think after the data summit.
Yeah, I was going to say, that may influence some of the discussion. And
Maybe the last week in September.
Okay.
Back to the 28th?
Okay, so I'll get with Lynn and we'll come up with a couple dates and times and send some stuff out.
What kind of a retreat are we talking about doing? I'm thinking Luther Haven and a rope pull and climbing trees and that sort of thing, or something a little more adult.
Falls and all.
Yeah, Trust Falls. Those things work, they really do. Yeah, okay. I'm in.
I'll catch you, I promise.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe not quite to that extent, but, just where we can spend some time and chart some goals and that sort of thing. Okay, so we'll get some possible dates out on that. And that's all we had scheduled for board comments. Okay, so we're on to our consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda?
So moved.
Okay, thank you. And is there a second?
I second.
Okay, thank you. It's been motioned and second. Is there any discussion?
I would just like to know if there's anything possibly contentious in any of this. Is everything fairly self-explanatory and squeaky clean?
Yes.
Okay. I trust your judgment. Okay.
A couple.
go
ahead.
Yeah. I don't know about contentious. I did mention earlier that I would like to see at some point a presentation or a discussion of the Safe Passages contract. I think that's interesting. Contract, they're talking about, you know, personal safety issues and all that. So that sounded to me like a good item for a board meeting at some point. But as far as the contract, I read over the contract and it sounded okay to me, so.
And I had a general question on that line too, how many people they're reaching, but we can do it maybe during our.
Yeah, maybe that can be, I don't know if that'd be you, Miss Clark, that would, Trina, okay.
Trina? Yeah,
Way to pass the buck.
It is her thing, isn't it? I mean,
So, you know, maybe we can get some of that information in a presentation.
that's the only question I had.
How about the contracted services with Heritage Health? Was someone going to talk a little bit about that? That was you, right? And did they warn you about that? Okay, good.
Yes, thank you. So you may remember that at the beginning of this last school year, we were piloting the idea with Bryan Elementary only. Our contract with them includes a master's. It's really school-based social work support and services for our 4 most high-need elementary schools. So through this contract, Heritage Health is providing an on-site at the school licensed master level clinician, a case manager or certified family support partner, and a social work intern. So 3 different staff members. And some of the things that they're providing on site are individual counseling to students, group counseling and skills training, especially social skills, case management for families, so helping families to get connected with some of the support and community resources that they could use, family advocacy, and collaboration with the school's student care team. And so after meeting at the end of the year with Bryan's counselor, Isaac Myers, and Kristen Gorange, and just hearing, of course, there's adjustments with any new pilot, but just hearing how successful that was and how supported they felt as a school and staff, we decided to use Title I-A funds to offer that at all 4 downtown schools.
I had a question. So it's approximately 10 hours a week. So is someone on staff there half days, or how are you guys structuring?
Yeah, so each of the principals and counselors are going to be meeting individually with our Heritage Health support partners on that to figure out what would work best for their schools. I do know Heritage Health is hiring additional staff members to fully support now 4 schools instead of 1. So really it is, what did we do at Bryan? What are you thinking you would need at your schools, even though you've not quite done this yet, and then knowing that we need to be flexible.
And approximately, we were talking, how many students are they touching? Is it possible to follow up maybe in a quarter and see, we're reaching this many students, we're providing these services? Because it is a great program. So
I would love to do that. I'd love to have them to present at some time what exactly they're doing in that partnership. I know that Isaac said for him this was a game changer. It's not really I would say from an outsider looking in, it's not the quantity of students that they're reaching, but it's those, those tier 3, those 10% of the kids that are taking 90% of your time at the school that we're really targeting and supporting.
And I think allowing them to connect with other services in the community is probably one of the most beneficial pieces.
Very important.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Is this tied into our resiliency efforts?
It is. Mm-hmm. That's the great thing about Title I funds and the rewrite of ESSA, quite frankly, is that they included, if the need of the school is mental health, school-based mental health support, we can now use Title I-A funds to do that. Prior to ESSA, that was not the case, so it's a plus.
Okay, I have a couple questions just in the accounts payable, and I apologize that I'm doing that right here. I was just traveling over the weekend and didn't get them out, but I thought they were just good questions to ask. And one of them was on our commercial, I assume it's our commercial liability package that we run, our insurance package. It was with Morton and Company. And I was just wondering, is that, I know with some of our insurances like workman's comp, there's no market for that. The Idaho statute only allows 1 carrier to provide that. But is that something we've looked or sent out for requests for qualifications or quotations, that sort of thing, over the last few years? Have we ever shopped that?
That's a great question. I would have to do some research on that because I believe that's been kind of Brian who's taken care of that in past years. But yeah, I'll look into it.
You know, we did that this year with our auditing services, and we've done it with a number of other things. And I just, you know, it's a big dollar amount, you know, almost $400,000. That maybe it's, if we haven't done it in a while, maybe we should look at that this year as we move forward. The other one I had questions about, and this might be for Miss Clark, there were a couple Medicaid match to the tune of about $180,000. Can you just explain what that is?
Me too. Okay. So basically, Medicaid is when they send us a check, half of that check or a portion of that check, I don't remember the exact percentage, is our money. So they require us to send them Medicaid match funds that I have to sign a one sheet paper every year saying it's from our general fund, that they will not send us money unless they can make the portion of that check up with our general fund dollars.
So Medicaid provides 70%.
70%, yeah.
So I believe this month we had, I believe it was 180,000. There was 150,000 and 30,000.
Yeah.
You're saying that's the 30% portion.
Yeah, that means we're getting.
And we've got, right, whatever
checks from them,
70% of that is. Right. Okay. I think that was it. I might have something small, but I will just check with you.
Casey, I actually had one quick question too, and it was about the architectural fees, and I think it was for Dalton. I think that's what it was covering, but did you?
There was all the projects had architectural fees, I think, that were in the payables. I think Dalton had some for the building and for the parking lot redesign.
Okay.
Yeah, and those are on a progress billing, so that means they're starting to do some of the drawings, and they'll bill us as they put hours in on that job.
Okay. If there's no other questions, let's go ahead and vote on this. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda, items A through I?
Didn't we already do that?
Oh, I'm sorry. You're right. We did a motion
gotta
and it
vote.
was seconded. I'm sorry. Okay, well, let's take a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, consent agenda is approved. Welcome, Seth Dennison. You've got a technology update for us?
Yes, I do. Right on time. Dr. Olson, Chair Morrisroe, members of the board, thank you for having me for this technology update. This will be pretty similar to the update I've done each of the last 3 years around this time. Some of the slides may even look a little familiar to you, but I promise they've been updated for this year. First of all, I want to just explain a little bit about IT. In the education realm, that can have two different meanings. Traditionally, it means information technology, and so that's part of our department. That includes the infrastructure, the equipment, the repairs, programming, software, creation of accounts, all that. But it can also mean instructional technology, and so that's also included in our department as well. And that's things like professional development, curriculum, the actual integration of what's going on with technology in the classroom. And so we kind of have both parts of IT within our department. I've used this analogy before, but the largest company in Idaho actually has about 10,000 users or less. We have 12,000 plus users. So we have a really large technology system. We have a lot of different software packages and accounts to create and manage. We have 22 different locations with miles and miles of network fiber that connects all those buildings. So it's really broad and wide-ranging. There's a lot to it. So this is kind of just to give you some scope, some sense of the scope of what we're doing. This year, as far as classroom devices, we're going to be at about 8,000 Chromebooks. That's grown significantly over the last couple of years. About 3,000 PC-based computers, 1,500 iPads, about 1,000 voice over IP phones. That's all the classroom technology. That doesn't include things like projectors, document cameras. I mean, there's really a lot of technology now in all of our classrooms. I like to say that it's kind of like air. When people don't have it, they feel like they can't breathe. I mean, that really is kind of the point that we're at now. There's also a lot of security under technology now as well. So all of our buildings have security cameras. Our access control is controlled by our network. And then our infrastructure, we have a lot of infrastructure investments that we've made over the past several years, partly through the generosity of our community. So a lot of wireless access, it's pretty ubiquitous throughout our buildings. Network switching, UPS units. I kind of bring all this up just so you kind of understand a lot of the stuff that we're working with. And then in terms of our staffing, we've got about 11 and a half technology staff, and that's all on the information technology side, and then 1.5 staff members on the instructional technology side. And we were able to go up a half of a technology coach this year. Unfortunately, our previous coach resigned, and so then we hired a full-time person. So it's kind of a silver lining type thing. Highlighted up there is all the things that we've added to replacement cycles over the last couple years. So to keep all of this going and sustainable, we've tried to get ourselves on a manageable replacement cycle where we're bringing old stuff off and putting new stuff in its place, spreading it out over many years so that it's sustainable. When we talk about the technology budget and the technology budget sources, there's some good news here. You can see that the primary source for the technology budget is state discretionary funding. Also, we receive some federal E-rate funding and then some state categorical funding, which I'll talk more about in a second, specifically meant for classroom technology, so things that students are going to be using. And then that last piece of the pie there on the bottom is from our local levy, so that's about 10% or so of the technology budget. As far as things that are expended in the technology budget, planned to be expended for this year, you can see that equipment and devices makes up the primary piece of that, about 54% or so. IT staffing is also a pretty big portion of that, about $990,000, and then professional development and stipends, as well as licensing and contracts are those other smaller pieces. And I apologize, this slide, I think, in your handout may have been last year's numbers. I might have updated it since the packet went out. So just a couple of financial highlights. For this last year, our E-rate reimbursement and discount request was about $400,000, so that was about the same as the year prior. We also saw a $200,000 plus increase from the state in classroom technology funding. That was a huge increase. About $185,000 plus increase in state IT staffing funding. That one about tripled, maybe even and more than that. And then about $80,000 in our wide area network reimbursement from the State Department of Education. So all of those are additional funding that we received this year from the state. And a lot of that is due to the lobbying efforts of the Idaho Education Technology Association, the IETA, of which our district is a member and pretty active in. So we're really thankful for these increases, and they certainly help us to do more in terms of student devices and equipment. As far as our vision goes, some of you might have heard me say this before, but we're investing in innovative tools to inspire our students and teachers to reach new heights of learning. And so along with that, we really feel like in the technology department, as far as our strategic direction goes, there's two pieces of that are key to what we're doing. One is with our teachers and quality teachers and instruction, equipping our educators with the tools to innovate through the use of creativity, critical thinking, and problem solving. All those are really key to the use of technology in the classroom. And then the second is for our students, for the individualization of their education. And so developing high interest and relevant learning experiences that include the use of technology. So those two pieces of the strategic direction really drive a lot of what we do, and you'll see that in some of the goals that we've set. Another piece of the strategic direction is safe, supportive, and vibrant learning environments, and that includes online spaces as well. Earlier, I think it was this winter or spring, I came and presented a few of these to you, but really this is about ensuring that our staff and students have safe and welcoming spaces to learn and work, and for us that includes the online environment. So these are just a couple of things that we do along those lines. We have required training that our teachers go through each year. I think Dr. Olson mentioned that a couple of meetings ago. We've got our student technology agreement that at the beginning of the year, all our students see and sign. We're working on making that more of a digital document rather than a paper copy. Safe technology tools, I'll talk more about that in just a second. We do have lessons on digital citizenship that are taught at each grade level in our technology classes. And then a lot of resources for families from commonsensemedia.org. This is something that I'd love for all of you to be able to share with people that have questions or maybe talk to you about this. We also at our cdaschools.org website, if you do /STU, Student Technology Use, there's a whole bunch of different resources for students and families at home. And honestly, this is something that after seeing the Screenagers movie last year, we started really paying a lot of attention to. My goal over the next year is to get to every school to talk to the PTA or other parents about this very issue, because we have so much that we're doing inside the school walls to filter internet access and teach our students about digital citizenship. But then when they go home, many of them just have unfettered access to the internet 24/7, and that's something that concerns me. So along those lines, some of the safe technology tools that we have are content and email filters. So one that we've had in place for many years is called Gaggle, and you can read that second bullet like 4 times fast if you want. You might not get it right. We've used Gaggle filters for keywords and content on our student email for many years, probably close to 10 years. We're also now going to start using it for our student Google Drive accounts as well. So what it does is it scans all the files that are in student Google Drive accounts, checking for things like keywords, content, and images. What that does is it helps us to flag some of those and then forward them to a principal or counselor, depending on what the content might be, so that they can follow up. There's a lot of really innocuous foul language that you know might get forwarded, but also sometimes there's more serious things as well, suicide threats or other things. And actually this last year there was a situation where a student's life was saved because of the email filtering that we had in place. So we're also making an update to our Lightspeed web content filter, and part of this is to just keep up with everything that's happening. So the update will allow us to filter a little bit more easily by user. So even when a student is off of our campus but logs in with their school account, then filtering will kick into place. It's cloud-based, so again, that means that it's not just limited to when students are on our campuses, but potentially if they took like a school Chromebook or something home, the internet would still be filtered. Mobile devices are part of that, as I just mentioned, and then really better insight into YouTube and to Google, some of the things that our students are accessing the most. Another area that we've really focused on is our customer service goals. So you can see there at the top, kind of our mission in the technology department is to encourage effective technology use to transform learning, engagement, and productivity. And this is not just for our students, this is for our staff, our teachers, our classified staff, everybody that works for the school district. One thing that we've really focused on is some of those customer service goals at the bottom, and I'm not going to read all of them, but the first one is fairly straightforward and pretty easy. Smile and be kind as you serve your customer. Give them some timely communication. Listen. Have perspective. Focus on the person that you're working with right then. And so each year we do a survey of our staff. This last year we had about 230 or so of our staff that responded. And you can see that the responses have been really positive. So about 96 to 94% in each of those focus areas said that we were either providing above average or excellent customer service in those areas. This grew just a little bit from the last year. It was pretty high last year as well. But this tells me that our staff that's out in the buildings is really providing pretty good customer service. I shared this graphic last year. This is the number of closed tech tickets by year. And so that's how we keep track. When a school needs a new account for a new student, they would submit a ticket. If their projector's not working, they would submit a new ticket. If they have a new staff member coming in and they need that classroom set up, they would submit a tech ticket. And so this last year, we closed about 8,220 of those tickets. So really, this is a large amount. You can see in the 2012-13 school year, it went up exponentially. And a lot of that is due to the bond that we had in 2013. We added a lot of devices to our system, and it's continued to grow. But what's interesting is you'll see that the tickets kind of came down a little bit this last year. So that tells me that we were maybe a little bit more efficient even than the year before. This is specifically for problems that disrupt instruction. So something like a teacher's presentation machine goes out. Maybe their dock camera is not working, their projector's not working, something like that. The light blue is 2014 data from our survey. The dark blue is 2017. You can see that it's really jumped from above average and excellent support over the course of those 4 years that we've had our staff take the survey. So this last year combined, it was like 85% of staff said that it was above average or excellent support for problems disrupting instruction. So that data is kind of moving in the right direction there. As far as information technology summer projects, we've got a couple things going on. We're continuing to work on some software solutions for transportation routing, for communications, notifications. We are replacing InfoCenter. You may have heard that word used derogatorily at times. We're replacing that with a product we're calling My CDA Schools. We're also working on a lot of different infrastructure updates. Some of these you've seen in your consent agenda. So we are upgrading the wireless at all of our elementary schools, replacing some switches. Woodland this summer has been a little bit of a mess as we recabled that building. We also doubled our bandwidth from 1 gig per second to 2 gigs per second. That's a really big change, bigger than maybe it sounds just there as a bullet. It required a lot of different moving pieces. Our firewall had to be updated, the content filtering that I talked about. We had to make several different changes. We're also starting to work on some of the bond remodel schools as well. So as those happen, we'll be applying for E-rate funding for many of those projects to try and make our bond dollars go even further. And then lastly, lots of devices, as we do every summer, lots of Chromebook carts coming in. The English language arts adoption at the middle schools and high schools, many of those classrooms will be receiving Chromebook carts this fall. We've been doing some work with iPads and then also updating to Windows 10 PCs as some of those go out. So a lot of different things going on. Summer's a really busy time for us. I actually kind of have the first day of school on my calendar and then take a breath once school starts because now it's on to the kind of the next thing. In terms of instructional technology, I want to talk about a couple of things. As we do each year, we have a focus for the year, and our focus for this year is tools to show student thinking. And so with all of those Chromebooks that we have out there, many of the ones that we are getting this year are touchscreen. And there's a tool out there called Explain Everything. It's an app that works on iPads, Chromebooks, PCs. but it really allows students to do a lot in terms of showing their thinking. And so this is just a quick demo video with a touchscreen Chromebook. But you can see it's like an interactive whiteboard. Students can record their voice as well as what they're doing on the screen. So it's really not just limited to one subject area. You could use it across all subjects, whether that be math, science, English language arts. Last year we got a bunch of science Chromebooks at the middle school level, so they could be using this. So Explain Everything is an app that we'll really be focusing on this year as a tool for students to be able to use the Chromebooks to show their thinking. We also continue to do a lot with computer science and coding. We have lessons, kind of a curriculum at the elementary school level that students do during their computer lab time. We've also incorporated that into our design tech. And then lastly, we've been working at the high school level to have courses that meet the technology grad requirements. And then robotics and virtual reality are another thing that we've been working on. I wanted to mention the Excel Foundation and some of their support. Many times we try these things through Excel and then they end up catching on in more areas. So this little robot is called a Sphero. Really pretty easy to work with an iPad, a Chromebook, an iPhone. You can get them specific to education in like a class set. So I have a class set of 12 that we drive around the district sometimes that gets tried out at all kinds of different classrooms. And then this is actually a ViewMaster. Some of you might remember this. The original 3D. It actually even has the little clicker on the side there. But instead of a photo wheel, there's a phone in there. So we're repurposing old iPhones to make these into virtual reality headsets. A lot of different uses for these, whether it be like ELA or social studies, science. You can look inside a human heart, zoom in, look at the specific parts of it. You can stand on the beach at Normandy and look around and see kind of the scale of the beach there. There's a lot of really immersive, cool stuff to give our students context for their learning with some of that VR stuff. So thanks to Excel for that. I know those applications are out right now for this next school year. Our student device-to-device ratio was one of our goals. It's something we've worked on a lot. You can see with this graphic, I kind of improved the graph, I think, that was in your packet. So in 2014, we started at 2.68 students per device. This year, we're actually going to be under 1 student per device. That might be a little bit misleading because we do have specific labs for specific purposes. So like at the high school, we have several different labs, some of which are used for like CAD drawing programs or something like that. So those are included in this ratio right now, but we are getting really close to having 1 device per student, which is pretty exciting. And as far as that device use in class, I mean, you can see it's just gone up every year. This last year, it came down just a little bit. But if you look at the number of people that marked never in 2017, I'm thinking that those are primarily some of our classified staff. On the survey, I asked them not to respond to this question if they didn't have a classroom, but I think some of them still answered that. So that may have skewed that a little bit. But still, again, it's like 85 to 90% of our teachers are using devices weekly or daily. This is a picture from last year's technology kickoff day in August. This year we have our district kickoff conference on Monday, August 28th. All of you are invited to be there. I know a few of you will be out of town that day. Really successful day last year. We're excited to expand it even more this year to include curriculum, reaching all learners, a lot of different types of professional development for all of our staff. And then lastly, these are our technology goals for 2018-19. Some of them you can see we're getting really close to reaching, moving to one-to-one district-wide for all of our students, adding PD tech offerings, increasing the number of teachers using blended learning, all devices on replacement cycles, and then lastly, increasing bandwidth I already talked about as well. So that's all that I have for now. I'll stand for any questions.
I don't have a question, but this has been terrific. My goodness. I'm listening to you and thinking about invest, inspire, and innovate, and all of our kids having known only a digital world. Boy, what a response. I'm so proud of the Coeur d'Alene School District and everything you and your crew is doing. This is tremendous. Thank you.
Thanks. Appreciate that.
I would second that, Seth. Thank you for the excellent presentation and for the work you're doing. It is amazing to me, just in the time I've been on the board, just the 4 years I've been on the board, how far we've come. So and in fact, we're close to one-on-one for devices. Pretty amazing, pretty amazing. So thank you.
I had a question about the security piece of it. You were talking about, use Gaggle and then the light speed.
Mm-hmm.
So who's monitoring? Like you said, you might see one student just searching for suicide. Is someone monitoring it daily, or are you guys getting alerts, or how does that work?
Yeah, so Gaggle actually has what they call a human monitoring service. So it first gets flagged by keyword, and then if there's a specific word that gets caught, then it goes to a human to look at.
Okay.
And then from that point, it comes to the district. It comes to myself and one other member of my staff, and then also the principal and 2 other people at that school.
So the time frame might be 8 hours, or it's pretty immediate as far as.
It's less. It's like minutes.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
The next question I had, because all of the students are now using Google accounts, I know there's software out there that notifies parents or updates parents what their children are searching while they're at school. Do we have that, or is it something that we could use, or?
I think the one that you're referring to is a product called Securely, which we don't use that.
Okay.
However, our student accounts are standardized, so you have access to your student's account actually using their it's their grad year first initial last name, and then their password is PW and then their student ID number, and you can look that up in Skyward.
Okay.
So you can get access to that, and that'll actually show their search history.
Do parents know? The only reason I ask is because I have a student at Charter, and so I think they use Securely, and I was just, this year, every week we get an update saying your child is searching this at school.
Yep.
I don't routinely look at it, but if I had a student that I was worried about and, they're spending more time on devices without parents around or being monitored, it would be nice maybe for parents, at least maybe to let them know how they can access their student searches while they're at school, whether we just write it on the website or.
Yeah, and we do have some of that on the website, not necessarily specific to search history, but specific to being able to view their account. We have that information on our website, but we can make it more clear, certainly.
It might be nice. Is Securely an expensive?
It's not, but it's fairly limited.
Oh, it's
it's free for parts, but the districts I've talked to that have used it does have a lot of limitations.
For big school districts, yeah. Well, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, any other questions for Seth? All right, thank you, Seth. Well done. Okay, next up's our finance report. Mr. Shipley, is that you?
I think I'm on. Is this?
All right.
Am I coming in loud and clear? It feels weird to sit down and not to be up. Well, I have put in a solid 2 weeks, plus 1 day counting today, and right now I am just really involved in building the relationships and kind of understanding what the job entails. And as far as the finance, getting to the nuts and bolts of it, the big compliance issue that we are in the middle of is the audit. And then so, as you know, we're required, all school districts, to have an audit. Our school year, along with all of them in the state, are June 30th. And also, what a lot of people don't realize, that I can tell you, is that the audit, although it's mainly financial statement focused, there's also a component for compliance with our federal programs, and programs that get tested go through a routine so they don't get the same ones every single year. There's a matrix for choosing those major programs. This year it happens to be nutrition services, and we're in the middle of that. And then when this process begins to wrap up, we'll have auditors in here, they'll give a presentation, and then we're really involved with the process, Katie, myself, and the staff. And so it's something that we consider and we think about for the full year. And one thing I would like to point out here too is that it's not the responsibility of the auditors for the financial statements. Those financial statements do belong to the district, and it's our responsibility to ensure that they're proper, that they're materially, that they're correct, and then also the controls over those finances over the assets that those statements report, safekeeping, having due process, good internal control procedures. Those are also the due diligence and our responsibility as a district to maintain, to keep up with, to constantly keep a hand on. So I just wanted to share that bit. And as these meetings roll forward, and as I learn more about this job and also the trustees and what you'll be requiring, especially with this bond projects that are going forward and reporting back and forth. And of course, my phone and myself, I'm always open. If there's any questions that anybody has during the year, financial statements and is my job. It's what I do. I do enjoy talking about it, and I enjoy coaching, teaching, and answering those questions. So I welcome them. I welcome them. Thank you. And then Katie, I wasn't sure if you had any more, if you wanted to add, but.
Just in case more we're expecting a finance report. I don't know if you remember that during the summer, we generally don't prepare a finance report. We kind of wait for the big reveal with the audit showing what the final fund balance is. And, if we were to report anything right now, it would be super preliminary. Maybe some of the transfers like federal indirects, those things wouldn't have taken place yet. So it would just be kind of confusing to report anything at this time. So we're waiting for that audit to finish, get the final numbers for the fiscal year, and then we generally pick up with our reporting cycle on the operations of the district in October after the September payroll has posted. So,
thank you, Katie.
I know we don't have a report, but I think the last report we did get from you, fund balance was looking like it was going to track kind of what was projected. Is that still looking that way?
Yeah, I think at this point it's kind of like getting everything put in. It's you might ask me now and it looks good, and then 2 hours later, oh, I got to do that, and then it's not looking as good. But I think we're going to be in pretty decent shape. We may make a transfer to pay back some of that Medicaid match money back to the general fund, so that could put us closer to kind of the goal is to be in the black. But of course, we had that $1 million issue with the SBA. So I think it's looking pretty decent at this point.
Issue with the SBA was that enrollment wasn't what we projected, right?
Exactly.
Okay. Just making sure there wasn't some other issue with the SBA. Okay.
Same one.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you both. Welcome, Chris. Okay. Item C is policy for information, and there's a number of policies. Are we splitting those up a little bit? So we have 2385 first, and that's probably Anna.
It is me. So Superintendent Olson, Chair Morrisroe, members of the board, 2385, the EL program, as you read through that, you can see it's primarily just a ISBA update. The one part that maybe stood out to you was the part at the end regarding reporting, which we struck in its entirety. The reason for that is after consulting with ISBA, because I was a little confused by that, frankly. That's not the procedure that we follow per the State Department rules and reporting. So after checking with them, that would only be if we were receiving federal funds for our EL students. We do not receive federal funds. We receive state Title III funds. So with those state funds, we do have a separate reporting process that happens annually, actually. So other than that, it was just the standard acceptance of ISBA recommendations.
Okay, so any questions for Anna on policy 2385 update? Looks like you're off the hook. Okay, policy 3345.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, Chair Morris Rowe, Superintendent Olson, members of the board. Policy, procedure, and form number 3345, use of restraint, seclusion, and aversive techniques for students are being presented for information tonight. This is a new policy. There's no beginning policy. 2 years ago, ISBA sent us some sample policy language that you will see that is the basis for the language that you have that is redlined. We initially pulled the policy for further review due to there being no reference to prevention and the use of positive behavior supports in the language from ISBA. The changes that are made that you will see there reflect replacing the definitions that were initially given by ISBA to the definitions that match the Office of Civil Rights and guidance from the U.S. Department of Education. In their publication, the U.S. Department of Education put out a publication in 2012, Restraint Seclusion, a resource document for schools that outlines 15 principles for school districts, school boards, states to use when working on their policies. And these policies, procedures, and forms reflect the recommendations in those guidelines. At this time, neither the federal government nor the state of Idaho have any statutes relating to restraint and seclusion, just some recommended guidelines regarding policy, one of those being that school districts do have a written policy outlining their training and procedures.
Okay, do we have any questions on this one for Ms. Clark?
I had a couple questions, maybe because it's, I think, an important policy and it's very detailed. So I'm trying to scroll through. One of them was, it doesn't say how we will notify the parent if their child has been restrained. Do we need to clarify? It'll be, I noticed in the stricken, I think they've telephoned them, but now it's just left open, they will be notified. Do we want to be more specific?
And so that's what we had a place in the forms to identify how that notification occurred, so that they would either be telephoned, emailed, but that contact would be made by the building administrator.
I feel as though if we're going to put a child in any form of restraint, it should not be an email. They should be notified via telephone personally. But I don't know how the board feels about that. I think that's a difficult email to get, and I would be startled if I received that. The other question I had is it talks about, now I can't find it, the hope would be to have this team, so a principal, a counselor, but it doesn't say it's that you have to have that. It's the hopeful expectation, or I'm looking for the exact word. And I wondered why it was just this was the goal of the school to have this team in place, and not our expectation.
Is that the team of the place who
Yeah.
are trained
Yes.
in restraint exclusion? So basically, what's recommended, we train our staff in de-escalation techniques that it's recommended by CPI, which is Crisis Prevention Institute, and we utilize the nonviolent crisis intervention that they recommend.
Perfect.
That a team of individuals at each school be trained in the restraint maneuvers. The recommendation is that just a team be trained rather than an entire school, because the findings are that when more individuals are trained in restraint, it tends to get overused. That instead the recommendations are that the focus of training is on prevention and de-escalation.
Yeah, that all sounded great. I think it was just that if we could change the wording that we will have that team in place, that it's instead of it is our goal that we will have a team in place. And the other question was, it doesn't say how often we're offering this training. Is it annually? Is it?
We actually offer the training about 6 times per year. Individuals become certified, and their certification lasts for 18 months to 2 years, and then they need to be retrained.
Yeah, I'd just like to see that in the policy too, that whatever the federal guideline is on how frequently they must have this training, that we're ensuring that everyone on that team is certifications up to date. And it talked about, the CPR is no longer required. Is that because we've changed our CPR? I know it's different now how we're teaching it in schools. Was there a reason why that we took that out?
So there's a couple of things. In the federal guidelines, there are no recommendations as to how frequently the training occur. That is through the different type of restraint programs that you receive. And then the types of restraints that are trained, there were previous restraints that were more limiting to students that then also required the use of potentially CPR. Really, when we're looking at a pure protection, there might be some emergency interaction, but ideally staff will be able to remove themselves and others from a setting rather than restrain an individual.
Perfect. Okay, I was curious about that. And one last question. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. Thank you.
It was that it said the superintendent was the person that was informed if restraint was used. That was just changed to the district in general, the district. So I felt uncomfortable that could it be the person answering the phone, and then I wanted it to be somebody that is on call for receiving alerts about restraints. So I don't know if we could clarify that.
Yeah.
So in most instances, it should have been the building administrator acted as the designee, and then that was.
Yes, I had that highlighted too. So this is on the procedure portion of 3345. It's on page 88 and 87. And what stood out to me, I think it was item 6. It says that the superintendent's office shall maintain documentation as to the events. But then item 2 was that the building administrator shall notify the district office of the event and provide the elementary and secondary director with a copy, as opposed to the superintendent. I just thought, well, if this, and I know it's all intermingled, but if the superintendent's office is responsible for recording the events and reporting the events, shouldn't they be notified? And by not notifying them, could we potentially miss one there? That seemed a little inconsistent to me.
So this is where it says the superintendent's office shall maintain documentation as to events of restraint and seclusion, shall prepare any and all necessary reports to legal entities. That is the statement. And so you would like it to read.
Well, I think that one's fine, but I think if that's what that's going to read to me, number 2, and I think this is what Lisa was saying also, that item 2, that the notification from the building principal would be to the superintendent's office, where currently it just says the district office.
Okay. Yeah, it's written in that way is that they are contacting their the supervisor, either the elementary or secondary director, and that is the identification at the district office. And so then you would like to see that they then notify the superintendent.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
If it's a chain of command thing, sure.
Absolutely.
That
addition.
I had a couple other questions just right around this area. One I wonder about, it talks about a building administrator, and this is item 3. Secure the school video and that sort of thing. And I think it says shall make their best efforts to maintain a copy. And I wonder why we don't have Jay, and forgive me, I don't know his last name, but in security. Or Justin.
Forget. Or
Thank
Justin.
you, Justin Fine.
Justin Fine.
You know why that isn't kind of his position? I know when we've had things, a slip or something like that, that he's been the person in that, but that was a question I had there. And maybe it's just easier for the building principal. They know the building and the situation.
Well, the building principal would capture that. Is that something I think that we might potentially look at in our SERP? Would that be something that would then be handed off to or given to Justin Fine, or is that just something that the building principal would gather and store? I guess that would be the.
Yeah, I don't know, how long we keep that information, or the video, we're dumping it every 10 days.
Mm-hmm.
So I assume that's one for protection for the staff member and two against potential litigation.
Yeah, and it's not unusual if an instance like that occurs that you might be sitting down with the parent and actually reviewing the video with the parent. Mm-hmm.
So principals are busy people. I was just concerned about them making their best effort to secure the video. When we have someone in the district office that
And
has
actually,
access
I
to
would
that
say
video.
that, again, because they're typically the ones that they're the ones that are making the contact with the parent, they're the ones that are having that conversation with their staff, and so they would typically be the ones that would capture that and then review that information with whether it be the staff or the parent.
Okay.
I found these, if I can clarify for you what I was talking about too, is under number 5. And most of it's stricken out, but it says it is the goal that each school building will have a team of at least 5 trained individuals, including a building administrator. Can we just change that? Is the expectation, or it is because the goal just is too nebulous, and I think it's not concrete enough for me.
Mm-hmm. I think that would be just fine, the expectation.
What page is that?
That's on, it's number 5, but most of it's stricken out. It's the very last sentence and it's underlined. It's on page 89, I believe. Yeah, 89. And then back to the CPR and first aid training again.
Mm-hmm.
We took that out because it's not federally mandated, or
It's actually not part of this policy. We don't have a CPR policy, and actually, we were just following the recommended guidelines, and from both Crisis Prevention Institute and from the U.S. Department of Education. As far as looking at the nonviolent crisis intervention, de-escalation, and intervention techniques.
Okay, so we have a separate CPR or first aid.
I don't know if we do. The initial policy that came from ISBA, which was quite different from the recommendations from OCR and the U.S. Department of Education, had language with regards to every staff member within the school district being trained in those types of things, and we were really looking at what was appropriate for our students and for our staff, for such a large staff.
And just last question, how frequently do we have these incidents?
So you'll notice when you look through the policy that it is for, it does not, there are some students in special education on 504s, and then other general education students that you may be intervening with. Some students on specialized plans or programs might have a move or a restraint or some seclusion that's within their plan. For those students, it might happen more regularly. It really should be occur very infrequently for a student without a plan and be a red flag indicator that we need to get together and put together some sort of plan. And I think it's mentioned in there that should be seen as a potential child find issue, and that the team needs to get together and look at what can they do in the future to prevent that sort of an instance or plan.
Lisa, earlier you had a couple revisions. Do you know what page that was on for Lynn, so she can have it in the?
I think we got it.
I know, but she needs to know what page it's on so she
They were
can make the
88 and
changes.
89. And it was just a.
Very first comments you made about
It was addressing the goal. Mm-hmm.
will have to be what page?
An expectation.
That was page 89.
89, yeah.
And it's
number 5.
Yeah, bullet 5. It's at the top of page 89. I think.
And I like that language rather than a goal, that it's an expectation that each school building will have. The team.
Okay, any other questions for Amy?
Thanks.
Yeah,
And then did you also get the one that when it goes to the secondary or elementary director, that then they then pass that on to the superintendent? Okay. Okay. Thank you.
That was page 87. Okay. Okay, next up, we have Scott there with policy 4600. Good evening, Scott.
Good evening, Chair Morris Rowe, Dr. Olson, members of the board. This is policy 4600. This is a revised policy that really tries to clarify and better define our policy and our procedures in welcoming volunteers into our schools. It also helps define the background checks we conduct for volunteers, ensuring that these requirements are consistent with the expectations that we now maintain for our employees. And the goals here really are to ensure we have reasonable safeguards in place while continuing to welcome and encourage volunteer service. You know, we want to make it easy and convenient for people to volunteer in our schools. We also want a clear policy, reasonable expectations, and useful orientation for those volunteers. I just wanted to note that probably the most significant change in the volunteer program this year is the addition of a half-time volunteer coordinator within our community relations program. And as you know, Victoria Michael has assumed that role. She will coordinate with office staffs at all of our schools to implement our volunteer program, to oversee the compliance with this policy, including performing background checks. And lastly, I just want to say that, you know, for those who wish to volunteer, little here, I believe, is changing. They will be asked to fill out a little more paperwork. That's to help us perform these background checks, specifically running their names through Raptor. That's the system that searches sex offender registries nationwide, but also spending a little time checking the Idaho repository to flag any other serious criminal charges or convictions that may not appear through a Raptor search. This might be other types of person crimes that, again, wouldn't necessarily flag a volunteer as a sex offender. Could also include some very serious property crimes that we might want to know about. I think we feel that this is still really a very reasonable level of vetting that we should be performing with our volunteers.
Okay, is there questions or comments on this? I have several, but I can go now or I can wait. Okay, Scott, on page 96, which is the end of the policy, it says the final decision to accept or reject a volunteer applicant rests exclusively with the building administrator. And I guess I understand that, except my only concern is, you know, if there's certain red flags that, you know, the principal or the building administrator could say, well, that was a long time ago, or, well, I know this person and that's not their character, or something like that. So, you know, I think that does concern me. I think there's certain things, for instance, if it were a, you know, a sex crime or something like that, that, you know, there shouldn't be any acceptance of that, or, right. You know, not that could happen, but with this policy that could, I guess.
And I think
seems to me if there's certain red flags, then right. We should thank them and pass. But
I agree, and I do think with the procedures that we've updated here for you, I'm pretty sure that there would be no scenario in which a person with a history of sexual crimes or violations who would be on the registry would ever somehow make it into volunteer service in the schools. I don't believe that would be a situation where principal could override that. It's spelled out pretty clearly in the procedures.
The problem in the past, we had problems with, I think, people with domestic violence in their background. So that's not a sex crime, but that was a concern. So this would flag that also?
That's our hope. That's our hope, by doing a bit more of a thorough search, at the very least, of the state of Idaho repository. We hope to be able to learn that level of background. To go much beyond that, I think would kick it up to a higher level of a background check, such as that we might perform through the fingerprint system that we do with all employees. I think we need to have a reason to want to take it to that next level, and we have spelled out a couple scenarios where we would do that.
So if the principal turns this person down, then then the administration is notified, right? So the kid or the adult can't go to another school.
I think we would maintain the name in a district-wide database.
Okay, thank you.
I have a couple that are just, maybe clarifications, but page 99 at the top, it's under item 2, and I guess you've explained a little bit about what it is, but the criminal check is the Raptor system, and then some review of the Idaho repository, and that's going to be done by Victoria.
Correct. That's our intent at this point.
And what's our plan to notify staff member? Because staff, I think that's a big change, and all of a sudden you have mom or dad showing up to be a watchdog person or to read with a classroom, and all of a sudden they can't go in because they haven't gone through this yet. They didn't know they need to be 48 hours notice or application 48 hours before. I'm concerned about that. And are some teachers just going to say this is just too big of a pain, and not ask for parent volunteers? And I don't know. I have a little heartburn, and I know we looked at we've talked a lot about background checks on employees and staff members and that sort of thing. I have a little bit of heartburn about doing this on every person that wants to that wants to spend time in our classroom, whether that's reading to a kid or chaperoning a field trip, or I don't know about all the schools, but Hayden Meadows, you've got parents walking with the kids up to Super One when they're doing their community field trip. I don't know. I understand we need to protect the student, but I just wonder, for those sorts of things where other adults are involved, and we're not talking one-on-one, an adult with one student or an adult with no supervision, I'm a little concerned we're going too far.
Mm-hmm. And Casey, my question was, does this apply to PTO volunteers? Because oftentimes the PTO will be in the school doing some sort of activity. So are we going to require even PTO parents to do this?
I think all levels of volunteer service. That would include PTOs, volunteer coaches.
Okay.
Vision screenings, you name it, and all those different things that their parents are coming in and helping with.
If they're in the schools, I think we need to apply it consistently and evenly.
Our number one job is to keep our kids safe.
Right, and I understand, and I like it. I don't think it's going to operate quite as easy as we have it on paper here, and I think we're going to, if this is adhered to, and I think adherence has been the issue probably in the past, we're going to find a number of headaches with that, and I think Victoria might be spending more than half of her time doing background checks, certainly this first year.
Yes.
And you and I and Seth talked a little bit about this beforehand, and I told you what a couple of my concerns might be. Seth mentioned something about, we're doing some updates with Raptor, and that perhaps their services are more extensive than what we either currently pay for or we currently think they are, meaning they're not just sex offender registry checks. I think we should explore that.
Absolutely.
And we're talking a lot of man hours too.
Mm-hmm. If that pans out, I think that would save us quite a bit of time.
Some of these schools probably have, hundreds of volunteers at the elementary level.
Yes.
On page 99, at the bottom, under these were automatic disqualifiers, and I mentioned this to you, but I'm going to mention it again just here with the group. But it talked about, sexual assault or exploiting a minor, physical abuse of a minor, I question why we don't have adult in there also. I think if we had someone who abused someone, they're potentially an abuser. Dave talked about that with, domestic violence and that sort of thing. It seems like we need to put adult in there also.
Any record of violence
Right.
toward another human being
Right.
should be an automatic disqualifier.
On item 3, it talked about physically abusing any minor or their spouse. And I would prefer that say physically abusing physically abuse their spouse or any minor. Because are we talking, the abuser's spouse or the minor's spouse?
And should it,
Good catch.
Right.
Just physical
Right.
abuse.
and just,
period.
yeah, or partner, yeah, because
Yeah.
that's new spouse.
Right, right. Again, that's where, and that one again makes the exception that it's for minors.
Right.
On page 100, under the supervision section, that first paragraph reads, all volunteers shall provide assistance only under the direct supervision of a member of the professional, administrative, and teaching staff. I don't know, professional just, it seems like it should just read a member of the administrative or teaching staff. And it should be or, not and.
Right. We can make that change.
And then on the next page, page 101, this would be in the second paragraph. Any issues that may arise will be referred to the volunteer coordinator, school principal, or the district volunteer coordinator.
I think that's making a reference to that schools may also have a volunteer coordinator that our district volunteer coordinator would be working with and coordinating with. So it does sound redundant, but that I believe was the intent of how that was written.
Yeah, so maybe we add school volunteer coordinator there.
Or you could put building volunteer coordinator.
And then the last one I had under this one was on page 103. And there's just a list of reasons to terminate. And I would think on item 10 there, it should be or, not and. I think it should be on item 10 there on page 103. It's listing different reasons to terminate their volunteer status.
So any
Changing
one
that
of
to an or.
Any one of the 11.
Right.
Yep.
It's not all of them, it's any one of them. Okay. I'll be interested, this is going to be out for 30-day comment, right?
Correct.
And staff this will go out in our email that Pam sends out now to staff members. Be interested to see what kind of feedback we get.
Thank you.
My question's page 108 on the volunteer disclosure statement. So it says that this is confidential, and the principal or staff at the school will not be made aware of your answers. But that seemed a little bit confusing because a lot of these things are very severe and they're automatically going to be disqualified. And there's a couple items on here that I guess if the volunteer coordinator deemed this person was okay to volunteer, the principal or school administrator may want to know, or like even the basic things, have you been a teacher before? I just didn't know why the confidentiality, is this common practice maybe? I just wasn't.
No, I don't think that there would be a reason necessarily to withhold that information from the building principal.
I mean, it's very personal information, so I can see why someone would want it to remain private. I just didn't know if that's what.
We included that because we thought it might be useful for us to know, the district to know, not as a reason potentially to disqualify someone, but perhaps to know their background and their potential as a volunteer, and perhaps to even embrace
It might be nice if there was a statement that didn't have as many of these severe items on there that automatically are going to disqualify you. But then some things that may be confidential that I can see why you'd only have it available to Victoria. So the forms kind of repeat each other, but I don't know if there's, just thinking out loud. But.
Well, we do want to be sensitive to if someone is flagged, to try to keep that confidential as much as possible, because they're potentially they're still they're a parent, they're a member of our district community, and we don't necessarily want their answers getting out to a wider audience. But I do think at some point, if we flag someone for disqualification, we need to communicate to some extent with the building principal the reason
right, that's what I was worried
for
about.
that, and hopefully the principal can maybe assist us in having that discreet conversation with the would-be volunteer, especially if they want.
And does this policy, is it going to address when we will have to disqualify volunteers, how they'll be notified? Will that be then Victoria's job, or how will that?
Yeah, Victoria would have a principal role in that. I think we're still thinking through a lot of the procedural parts of that.
Okay.
My guess would be on that form, once you get down there, if you're saying yes on some of those, you're probably not turning it in. You're probably getting the hint that maybe they don't want me there. But I think it is an interesting point. The first thing I commented on was how it says that, the final decision rests in the principal to accept or deny, but they haven't seen this disclosure statement.
Right.
So
there's
there's some inconsistency.
We do need to have a communication with the principal if that situation arises, and go from there.
Although you've told them it will not be viewed by school building staff. I know. So
We'll hash
maybe
that.
some
We'll hash out
cleanup
those.
of that.
Right.
I just wanted to say I agree with Dave. I've got a couple of thoughts about this. One is I think, safety of kids, of course, is a primary concern here. There's nobody in the room that disagrees with that issue. It could become burdensome on some of the staff as far as getting volunteers. So my inclination is to try this out for a while and see how it goes. I spent my career working with child abusers and sex offenders. There was a wonderful group of guys I worked with for about 20-something years. I can tell you one thing is that they will not, one thing they will generally not do, of course, is apply for a situation where they're going to think they're going to be looked at too closely. And the big concern oftentimes is kids being alone with certain people. So that would be my biggest, if a staff member is present, if a principal, whatever, if somebody's present, chances of something happening to a kid are pretty slim in most situations. It's one of the things that these people often do is try to get kids alone, become their special friend, take them away from adult supervision, and it's away from adult supervision is when things start happening. So, so we have a balancing act here. We want to encourage people to work in our schools. We have wonderful volunteers. I've walked into the schools and seen some people sitting in the hallways reading with kids and all that. On the other hand, we have to be very cautious. So I appreciate your working on this policy. It's a difficult one, I think, to balancing those. But I would probably, my bias, maybe it's because of my background, would be err on the side of safety for now. If it becomes hugely a big hassle and we start hearing problems, principals are telling us, teachers are telling us, others are telling us that this is not workable, then I say we tweak it. We work on it this fall.
Right.
That's where I'm coming from.
Well, one thing I just want to highlight, I brought this policy up with Trina a few months ago based off something that was sent to us when we were looking at our fingerprint scans and background checks for employees. And it was something I saw on a State Department email, I think, that she forwarded to us, that it's required of volunteers who have one-on-one contact. I did a little check-in this last week and I shared it with Scott, but I just emailed that person that email came from and said, well, how many people did Coeur d'Alene School District fingerprint this last year. And for volunteers, it was 7, I think. And we talked about this a little bit, Scott, but I think that's a key component, I think, to this. I think that's probably an area that's been overlooked a little bit. I think it's been a little gray. What is one-on-one contact? Or what's one-on-one supervision? I think building principals all have different ideas of what that is. I think that's one area this can maybe be beefed up a little bit, is defining what that means. Because I think to some principals, that's an adult in the hallway is in line of sight of another adult, and so that's fine. And that's, I don't have a big problem with that, but I think that should be defined, just so we have consistency. We have some wonderful volunteers. I know at lots of our schools there's moms and dads that spend 10, 15, 20 hours or more a week. And I know those folks, in the hustle and bustle of school, kid needs to make up an IRI or an ISAT or whatever, they're getting pulled, and I think we need to define that just so we make sure we're following the policy correctly. What is one-on-one? So we're fingerprinting people, because I'm quite certain, just on my experience in a couple of schools where my kids go, that there's more than 7 people in our district. And we're not even talking about volunteer coaches at the high school level, but there's more than 7 people in our district that have one-on-one access to students.
When you say one-on-one, are we thinking the same thing you're talking about, that place where they're in public, or where they're in those public spaces or not public spaces?
Well, I think we need to define that a little bit. I think there's, a week ago, before I talked to a couple building principals, to me, one-on-one, an adult with one student in the hallway was one-on-one. After talking to them, I get that it's not, and that might be that might be 100 people per building. But if we have an adult pulling, a little one into the computer lab to make up a test, or to read because it was too loud out in the hallway, or whatever it is, they need an accommodation of some sort, or they're making up a test, or, there's lots of things come up, then I think those people need to be fingerprinted. And I would guess, based on 7, that there's not one fingerprinted parent at one of our elementary schools. I liked the idea. I think if we can define that a little better, just so our principals know what we're talking about and what the expectation is. And I think in here it talked about those people are going to have a little different paths. It was going to be, maybe our district badges that we all get, as opposed to the little laminated one. I think that's huge, and I think that's a confidence builder for parents, and that we care, and that we're doing the right thing. I think that's where we could amp it up. And I think volunteer coaches, and Bruce is shaking his head yes there, but at the high school level, there's a lot of parents that are around with coaches or around kids as volunteer coaches, that maybe we need to do a little better job there monitoring that and making sure these folks are fingerprinted. And obviously not all volunteer coaches are alone with a student, but there's certainly the possibility.
And I can't remember where I read it, but I think it talked about, which may help in the efforts, is at the beginning when all the volunteers come, and this would have to be at each building, but like an informational night, having this, because I've volunteered and all of this, I was like, is this brand new? Working in the classrooms, but I think that would help just to have the information, and maybe even a time if you're talking about the fingerprinting that takes place, but that it's because this is going to be new for a lot of the parents that volunteer, and defining the one-on-one. But I do know we have the cameras also in our schools, and so when they are reading one-on-one in the hallways and such, that helps with that. But I'm pretty sure I read that in here about doing an informational night.
Yes.
So I think that'll be important so that people are aware when school starts, because they don't typically have volunteers for the first couple weeks, or, I mean, some do if they know the parent and they've had a previous child, but teachers are really just trying to get in the groove and getting their classrooms going. So maybe within that first start, before they really start coming in the buildings, would be good.
Yeah, that's my question. So if we adopt this policy at the next board meeting, we're going to have hundreds of parents wanting to volunteer for the new school year. Are we going to go back then and, because it takes fingerprinting if they have to go through the, police takes 30 days maybe. So we are going to think about how we're going to ease it. Are we going to ease it? I think it's going to take some thought, because we will have lots of people interested, I'm guessing, in the next several weeks.
Well, we'll be purchasing, I don't know, Kelly, have we ordered our digital fingerprint scanner?
Oh, that's good.
So that's going to speed up the turnaround time potentially on that.
Okay, that's good.
And I think they said sometimes it's even days, right? I mean, potentially, but I think they said within 2 weeks for sure. But at times it could be within days.
So I think the concern that you're mentioning is, so what happens potentially, it may take us some time to get the policy the way we need the policy before we approve it. And at that point, the what if is, what if volunteers are already in schools helping teachers, working, doing the meeting and greeting, and even setting up classrooms with kids help. So that's the question you're saying. So what happens? How do we get the year off? Do we sort of somehow retro check those folks right after? Right. Anna had made a good suggestion, and we're meeting with administrators on 16th and 18th. It might be beneficial for us to check with them and say, okay,
this is
coming down the pike, and what are the implications for you, and let's get ready. I mean, because although we're going to be working on some wording, I think it sounds like we all still have some agreement about the basics of this, and so maybe we just get them thinking that way right away before the policy is actually even in place.
And I would definitely include the building secretaries. They're the first people we're in contact with when we go into the school buildings, right there when we're buzzed in, and then we sign in, and usually we say where we're going and stuff. They're
already so busy though. I hate to ask them.
They should also be informed.
Oh yes, definitely.
Yeah.
They're gonna be.
Not many people object to going through security to get on an airplane for the safety of everyone in that plane. I think if we presented it like that, if we use that as a parallel, I think it would be a lot easier to swallow. Just an idea.
Yeah, and I think we talked about even having a badge system that would reflect that somebody has passed our screening measures. And
Yeah, I think parents are going to appreciate it, but I think at first there's going to be, what do you mean? I've been at the school for 8 years. There's going to be a little bit of that. Just,
I want all that screening
a lot's
stuff,
going to
just
depend
not
on
for
how
me.
it's communicated out, and just getting the information out there. So prevent the surprises.
Can I ask another question? So every year, do you have to get re-fingerprinted if you want like subsequent years, or how long does the screening last that you do?
For employees?
Yeah.
They never have to be re-fingerprinted at this point. Yeah, they get fingerprinted upon hire, and if they don't leave, they could not be fingerprinted again.
So you'd recommend the same policy then for volunteers, or would you say every year when they come back and they reapply, or are we just rolling them over?
Right now, we are supposed to be running them through Raptor once a year.
Okay.
So the secretaries typically do that in September, get them all run through Raptor, and they have their names, and those people are good for a year.
Okay.
And then in the fall, they rerun them through Raptor.
Based on
This policy says every 2 years, but I think it says pass the review every 2 years.
It does.
So maybe it is every 2 years.
Based on the feedback we've already received from most of our elementary principals, they feel very few, if any, of their volunteers would meet this threshold for needing to come in and get fingerprinted, just because they're not really put in that position of working one-on-one, unsupervised in a non-public area of the school. Defining that's really kind of been the challenge, one of the challenges with this, because area is not reasonably defined as public may vary from school to school depending on the design of the school, the function of certain spaces, where cameras are oriented. So I think it's difficult to be too specific in this policy for prescribing exactly what qualifies as a public space versus a non-public space, and we're hoping each school can help define those areas for their volunteers.
So I think you kind of reminded me there a little bit, but as you know, I did a little digging on this last week and spoke to our attorneys. And I think we use one-on-one, but the code actually uses unsupervised contact is what's an actual statute. And IDAPA actually has a definition of what unsupervised contact is. Now, it's not super great, but it says direct contact or interaction with students not under the direct supervision of a school district employee on a continuing basis. This includes contact or interaction with students in a scheduled school activity that occur outside of the school or outside of the normal school hours. Actually says this excludes extracurricular trips and one day length starting during the school day.
And that's regardless of whether there are security cameras there, correct?
Yeah. But I'm not sure that's super clear for principals. What's the direct supervision of a district employee? I mean, I think we could do a better job of defining what that means and just making that clear. Because a kid gets sick and mom's volunteering in the office and she takes the sick kid into the sick room. That's happening. And we have volunteer people working in our offices. So is that not under direct supervision? I think we just need to define that, and that'll help the principals.
Thank you.
And so maybe on the 16th and 18th, they'll have an idea of some definition of that.
Well, I think maybe they're not thinking that like you are, grab them real quick and bring them into the meeting. They're probably not thinking.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, Jill, sorry to make you sit through 2 hours of that to get to bus routes. Next year, let's put the bus routes. We'll do that first.
Jill told me she wanted to be there. I'm never late. Just kidding. Welcome, or good evening, members of the board. Nice to meet a few new faces here. My name's Jill. I'm your fearless leader over at Transportation. So thank you for being here, and thank you for allowing me to be here. And so every August, I am required to present to you all of our route information. So in your route pack, you should have, or in your board pack, you should have all the route information. It's pretty much the summaries of the areas that we drive to and transport our students from. It should have any of our safety busing in there. It also should have any of our buses that we're expecting the need to turn around in. So all that information will be right there for you. And then I threw together a little PowerPoint for you here, just to kind of, it's been I don't know, a couple years since I kind of just brought everybody up to speed. So I thought it might be a good idea to we're all in this together. So how do I advance this here? Yes, right button. So just some quick facts. The Transportation Department, we employ 83 staff members. That consists of 49 school bus drivers. We currently do have 3 positions that need to be filled, and so those are posted, and they close. After they close, then we'll be doing the interviews and filling those positions. We do have 10 school bus attendants. We have 17 substitute school bus drivers. And I know that sounds like a lot, but We actually have 6 of our substitute school bus drivers are retired school bus drivers, and then we have 5 new hires currently in class. So that leaves us with really about 6 left over with 3 positions to fill. So we definitely need people, and I'm really looking forward to the job fair on Wednesday. We do have 1 substitute bus attendant. Then we have 3 technicians. They take care of our bus fleet of 63. In addition to that, they take care of all of our white fleet rigs. Our white fleet rigs are considered our maintenance, food service, all those vehicles. And then you have us 3 ladies in the office, me and Leslie and Nancy. Just to give you a little bit of history here, not too much, a 3-year history. You can see that we have traveled consistently about 650,000 miles per year. In 2014-15, we traveled the 648,000 miles. 15-16, we traveled 631, and then 16-17, we traveled 663 miles. So if somebody was asked me how many miles do we travel, I would just say around 650,000 a year. As far as our diesel goes, you can see that in 2014-15, we used about 83,800 gallons of fuel for diesel. We used in 15-16 about 82,000 gallons, and then in 16-17 around the 88,000. And then on the gasoline, I kind of put those numbers out there for you as well. But the consistency again being about 85,000 gallons a year in diesel and approximately 755 gallons in gasoline. This year, we will begin our school year with 40 general education school bus routes. We have 9 special education school bus routes. And then this last year for midday kindergarten runs, we had 14, and I expect this year to be very similar. And then, of course, as I was asking, we're seeking board approval of the routes. If you approve the bus routes this evening, then what we would like to do is we would like to publish all of our bus stop locations on our website. And the way we do that, they're listed by school, by route number, and it has a stop location with your pickup and drop-off times. We would like to keep them online at least for the first 2 weeks of school. And we don't like to make any changes for the first 2 weeks unless they're just absolutely necessary. So, and then what are we up to? Safety, safety. That's what we do in my world. Just to kind of let you know, in February, we had our state inspection. And out of 100%, our compliance rating was 99.12%. I was very happy about that. And then something else that we're going to be up to is seat belts on school buses. The plan right now will be to implement them into our fleet beginning in the 18-19 school year. And so what I would like to do is get some volunteers together, get our committee formed. I'm thinking maybe about a dozen or so. I already have a few people interested. I would like to try to get some parents on there. Perhaps start our meetings in November and just start going through our best practices and policies and procedures and get them ready for the board members. Are we ready? Yes, we are. Yay. So any questions from anybody?
Just 2 things to say. One, as you know, I'm interested in, Jill, being on that, working with you on the policy involving seatbelts. That's really a important issue of mine. I've been pushing for the last year here or so, so I'd like to be on that committee. But secondly, I was just want to ask you about this issue of the people that came to the board meeting a few months ago from the Wolf Lodge area and from out that direction. They were concerned about, I notice on here you have the turnaround still at Beauty Bay, I think it is, isn't it? Anyway, I guess I just wondered if, did you get that issue resolved? Was there any more feedback there?
You know, I didn't hear anything further, but what I did come up with was the numbers. And I know it was asked how many kids we were transporting. So I know in 2012 we had, and I'm talking specifically Highway 97 south of Wolf Lodge, not the other end, but specifically that area.
Right.
We had, in 2012, we had 6 students that were reported riding the school bus. This last year, when I was getting the numbers from the driver, he had a total of 9 students. And these are all age groups, high school, middle school, and elementary. And so, and then I did a little bit of a rough math thing here for you. You know, if you take our average driver wages, well, first of all, let me say, in lieu that we're paying, the average in lieu that we're paying for just that area per year is about $1,300 a year for in lieu. In order for us to accommodate the request, we would have to add another driver and another bus out there. And what that means is if you take a driver, and again, this is just rough, but you know, your average driver wages and benefits is going to be $16 an hour, 4.5 hours a day. You're looking at $75 a day for just the driver. And then from Mineral Ridge up to where our turnaround would be, it's 7 miles one way. So that means we would have to do 2 round trips a day. So you're looking at 28 miles a day. Our current cost per mile is $4.15 per mile. So that's over right at $116 a day just for the mileage. So you add those together with your cost per mile and your cost for the driver, you're looking at approximately $190 a day times 180 school days, and you're looking at close to $35,000 a year.
Okay. I wasn't questioning your decision on this. I just wanted to know if you've been, because I think I just want to make sure that we've accommodated those parents, or at least communicate with the parents what the rationale for why you made the decision you did.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds like you have the numbers there to justify it.
The numbers, and not just the numbers, but it is a switchback. I mean, it's when you think about this particular area, and it's windy, but time-wise, you're out there super early. It's super black. It's pitch black dark out there. And then in the winter times, we're dropping kids off around 4 o'clock. To drive that switchback when it's pitch black dark like that, I just think it's too hazardous for a school bus. We have a nice area, a place for the parents to park. We do offer in lieu, and I just feel like that's appropriate in this particular case.
Thank you.
You're
Just
welcome.
wanted to know, I wasn't criticizing, I just wanted to know how that was resolved. Thank you.
Sure.
Jill, can you clarify something? The $4.15 per mile transportation cost, doesn't that include our labor costs?
When, yes, I guess it would.
Okay.
Yes. That's why he's the chief financial officer.
The other thing I just noticed in here, on the in lieu routes, you had one of them listed twice. So it's the Cougar Gulch and Greens Ferry Road is listed as the 4th, and it's the last one too, or the second to last.
I can make that
Page
correct.
111.
I can make that correction then.
I just had a basic question about bus routes, and I'm learning lots of new stuff. What is the average ride time for our students, that's living in the city? Do we monitor that, or how do we?
The average riding time?
Yeah, for a bus route.
Again, it's going to just depend on which route it is.
Mm-hmm.
A more outlying area, the kids will spend more time on the bus.
Okay.
But in town, obviously, it's shorter. Our routes are 30 minutes-ish for in town, a little bit longer for out of town. Some of our routes are even a little bit shorter. If it's, say, like behind Lowe's, we have like a ton of kids and 4 bus stops. And so it's a little bit shorter there,
And then are most of our buses pretty full, or would you say that what the maximum student per bus?
I try my best to keep them balanced out, no more than 50, 55.
55, okay.
Because for a comfort, legally, we can transport up to 71 students on a school bus. And that may work for field trips and elementary kids. But again, for the older students, I mean, the school bus seats are 39 inches wide, and it's pretty much 13 inches per booty, if you will.
Yeah.
And it just don't work. So.
I have a question. Hey, our transportation department's safety record, I know, is very good. How does it compare to other districts in Idaho?
As far as the facts, I would have to look that information up for you, but I feel very confident we're way up there.
Yeah, I have heard that we're like in the top 1 or 2 districts in the whole state. That sound fair?
I think so, but I would like to know the facts first
Okay.
before I commit.
We do a really good job. You do a really good job.
Well, the staff does, but thank you. Yes, I'm very, very happy.
Okay. Thanks, Jill. So this is an item for actions, which is why she's staring at us. So is there a motion to approve the 2017-18 bus routes?
So moved.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thanks, Jill. Sorry to keep you so long.
No problem. Thank you guys very much. Have a good evening.
Okay. We have a couple of policies for action. We saw these last month. They've been out for 30-day comment period, and it looks like we have received no comments. We can take these one-on-one, I guess. So is there a motion to approve policy 4135 as presented?
So moved.
I was wondering. Thank you.
Still awake.
Yeah.
I'll second that.
Thank you. It's been motion seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, and then the other policy was policy 5745. There was an addition to this one of unsatisfactory completion of a professional assistance plan. And this is professional personnel probation. So is there a motion to approve 5745 as presented?
So moved.
Thank you.
I'll second that.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Motion carries. Don't get out of your seats quite yet. We're just down to the board reports or committee reports here. Really nothing to report there other than we need to pick our board liaisons for the various committees. One of those being long-range planning, which I've handled the last few years. I know Lisa's expressed some interest in that. I do not have interest in it this year, so I don't know if anyone else does.
I nominate Lisa.
Seconded.
Okay, so we don't have to take formal action on that, right? Okay, Lisa, it is. And do we have to do ad hoc?
Yeah, I have something to say about that. I've been the board liaison for the ad hoc literature committee for 4 years. And yes, 4 years. And it's been fun. The people involved in it are just great. But I would like to propose letting someone else take that. And maybe also creating a new ad hoc committee having to do with recognitions. I've been for 4 years doing teacher recognitions, and there's quite a bit involved in that, and I would like to volunteer to continue doing that and hand the literature committee off to someone else.
It looked like you handed it to Tamara.
I love to read. I would love to be on that committee.
Okay.
Not to be a nerd or anything, but.
First year overachiever, all right.
Taking advantage of a new enthusiasm.
And I'll hang on to the teacher recognitions. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Lisa, for stepping up.
Okay, good, good.
And that's it for this, at this point, right? Didn't we ask for a few months ago, one on math, a math ad hoc committee? To look at the secondary, okay. So, okay. All right. So we'll be looking for someone to serve on that. Okay. Other than that, we had an August 21st workshop, but I don't think we have anything scheduled for that. I'm going to be out of town that day. Lisa's going to be out of town that day. So we get the day off. We don't have to come on the 21st. And then on August 28th is the district kickoff. Tom and I are both going to be gone for that. I think Dave's going to do the skit all by himself this time.
We are not going to dance. Not this time.
You should see the video. Okay, so
I think Seth destroyed that, didn't he?
I'm checking the video on that one.
Okay. So, if there's nothing further, this meeting is adjourned.